On today's episode, we're talking about how to make yourself a hard target. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Survival Dispatch News. I'm back with my buddy Sal De Janeiro, author of 21st Century Minuteman, and today we're talking about how to be a hard target. Sal, I know you have a lot to say about this, but before we jump into this, we're doing something that our other Survival Dispatch News hosts are doing. And Sal, you and I are going to participate in this game called conflictedthegame.com. And it's a really interesting deal. Basically, it is, if the apocalypse happened today, what would it be like? What decisions would you have to make? And what would really change? It really tackles the psychological, philosophical, technical aspect of surviving the apocalypse. Are you ready, Sal?
I'm ready. Let's hear this one.
I had some choices. I had three cards to choose from. I chose a pretty tame one. We're going to discuss the question and we'll answer it at the end. We really have an important discussion to do today anyway. So the question of the day on Conflicted the Game is the survival group that we belong to. This is post-apocalypse. So you and I are in a group. A lot of kids in the group, a lot of children in the group. What are three essential life skills that every child should know in today's current society? And then what are three other skills that we would add to their education in the post-apocalyptic world? Set your gears turning. We want to jump right into our discussion today. Sal, you and I are going to talk about becoming a hard target. Now, we're really going to get into some psychological stuff, right? We were kind of, our pre-interview, we're having a discussion about how important psychology is. Tell me about that.
In this regard, we're talking about criminal psychology. So it is good to know how the enemy thinks and how they do their victim selection process, essentially. So just a little bit about myself. I've done a lot of research on this. There has been several studies done where felons in high security penitentiaries have been interviewed, in particular shown just video clips of people on the street. And they've been documented indicating who they would victimize, who they would avoid. And what's very interesting is across the spectrum of these violent convicted felons, it's almost unanimous who they pick as a good victim. I've read all of that research that's been done, and I also was fortunate enough to attend the class by a gentleman named William April, Dr. William April, who tragically passed away a couple of years ago. He was only in his early 50s, I believe, at the time, so we lost him too early. The good news is, if you just Google William April with two L's, April last name, online, he has tons of interviews on podcast, articles, etc. And he was probably the best resource we had in the whole sphere of self-defense, understanding the criminal actor, the violent criminal actor. The thing about William April is not only was he a PhD in psychology and he was like a therapist at his own private practice, all that, but he was a been there, done that guy. He used to be a sheriff deputy. So he wasn't your typical intellectual with only book experience. This guy had literally been there and done that, and he was extremely insightful. So I was fortunate enough to take his class as well. Prior to that, for years, I had, again, read all of those resources about those studies that had been done on violent felons. William April discusses in depth those same studies as well. So over the course of many years, I've been very interested in this topic. So I'm going to bring that to bear here. I'm going to try to explain in the time we have what criminals are looking for and how they choose victims.
Something that you said really spiked me, and that's they pick their victims. And I think that's a lot. We don't think about that as we're walking down the street. Criminals, actually, a lot of them pick their victims out. It's a man, that's a weird feeling, knowing that you're walking down the street and you might be somebody's target. We don't think about that. So today we're talking about how to be that hard target, not necessarily hard as an armor surrounding yourself, but a hard psychological target, I guess. Am I right?
Absolutely. And in fact, again, I'll give credit to Dr. William April because he said it in the best way I've heard this put. He said, basically on the street, they interview you and you want to fail the interview. Right.
Huh.
So I've also heard it referred to as a shark bump. Sometimes, again, if a violent criminal actor approaches you, it's a shark bump. He's going to feel you out somehow and see how you react to that.
What's
right?
an example? What's an example of that?
walk up to you, hey man, do you have the time? Hey, do you have $1? Right? If
Okay.
he just
Okay.
reads the body language he's getting in return, that's going to make him decide if you are a go or a no-go, and you want to be a no-go
Yeah.
decision with that, right? So
Yeah.
that's just an example. So sometimes they shark bump you. Very often, though, they just observe, and it's a go or no-go decision based on just what they are seeing. So again, William April's interviews are all over the place. He goes into depth in a lot of this, as well as a lot of very interesting stuff in general about sociopaths and psychopaths and that kind of criminology and psychology. We're not going to get into that really here, but what I want to explain is what they're looking for and what makes them decide, is this a go or a no-go?
Yeah, we've kind of scratched the surface on this, haven't we?
We
A little
have a
bit
lot of
in
it.
some
Yep.
of our previous discussions. So this sounds great. I love where this is going. We'll get a little more in depth on some of these topics we've kind of talked about in the past. So obviously, one of the first things we talk about in all these circumstances is our alertness to our surroundings, right?
Absolutely. So if we look at the biggest indicators for a go decision that a violent felon is going to make, as in you make a good victim, they are going to victimize you. There's four particular ones I want to talk about here that have, again, surfaced in all of this research. Just an explanation of what this research was. Literally, there have been several studies where violent convicted felons in prison have been interviewed and shown video clips of just random people walking down the street. And it's hard to believe the synthesis among all of them in saying, I would choose her, I would not choose her, I would choose him, I would not choose him, just by looking at them walking.
Yeah.
Why is it that we get this almost uniform synthesis among violent predators, what they're choosing? So there's several different aspects that somebody portrays in their own behavior just when they're walking down the street. So the first one to consider is alertness to surroundings. This one comes up a lot.
Yeah.
Needless to say, criminals want a victim that's oblivious to their surroundings,
Yeah.
which probably 99% of the population is, right? So somebody's walking down the street, looking at the phone. The phone is absolutely the worst preoccupier of our attention that there is in modern life, right? People
Yep.
distracted on the phone. People distracted loading bags of groceries or other things they bought into the cars, right? People simply walking totally oblivious to their environment. So alertness. Now, if you spot individuals who give you the creeps in public, just by making eye contact, and you don't have to give the 1,000-yard stare. You don't want to incite something, but you just want to look at them. And when they know that you are aware that they're there, right there, all of a sudden you have been lowered on that scale of go or no go, right? You're much more likely to be a no go decision just based on being alert to your surroundings.
Yeah, I want to bring something up that I saw on social media recently, and it was a little piece of advice that a former military guy was giving about situational awareness. He was using the circumstance of, like you said, coming out the grocery store, getting ready to load your groceries, and you think there might be somebody in or hiding around your vehicle. And I know the guy meant well, but he's like, yeah, you can pretend you're on your phone, but while you do it, look around and on. But even pretending that you're on your phone could make you appear to be a soft target, couldn't it?
Well, this comes back to staying alert in transitional spaces, right? Victimization happens in transitional spaces. What do I mean by that? The parking lot, going from your vehicle to an establishment, coming out into a parking lot. So those transitional spaces, that's where you're typically approached by criminals. Can't you hold off on the phone call until you get seated in the restaurant or you're safely inside wherever you're going? Be alert in those transitional spaces.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, don't even pretend to be on your phone. Right?
I would
why would you want to pretend
to
be on your phone? That's the one little piece of advice that this guy was given. I'm like, no, don't even pretend, because you don't want to give the appearance of being distracted. Even if you're not distracted. So yeah, absolutely.
You want to acknowledge them. If you see anything in the environment you get a bad feeling from, you want to acknowledge it. Again, you don't have to give the 1,000-yard stare and incite a confrontation, but acknowledge it. Let them know that you are aware that they're there.
Going back to transitional spaces, doorways, for instance, coming from inside to outside or outside to inside. Oftentimes we can't see what's on the other side
Right.
of that doorway or around the corner and things like that. And that's where I will also offer this piece of advice: don't rush through anything. Take your time as you're going through doorways, and use your peripheral vision and know what's there as well. So far,
Nice.
so good. Yeah,
Certainly.
all this
Yep.
sounds great, Sal. So situational awareness. Where do we go from there?
So the single biggest factor, this is really interesting. In these studies that have been done, the single biggest factor in the go or no-go selection, the way somebody walks, that is the single biggest factor in their decision making. And this is kind of strange, but I'll explain, and it makes more sense as you think about it. Sex of the potential victim, male or female, has way less to do with than this criteria. The alertness factor is important, but has less to do than this. Even size, the appearance of physical strength has less to do than the way a person walks. And this is very interesting. And the audience may say, well, I can't control how I walk. To some extent, that's true. But really what they're looking at is they're looking for unusual gait. So the studies show that when an individual walks unusually slow, if they walk unusually fast, if they have some kind of strange gait due to their own physical makeup. And the other thing is, does somebody walk like they're on a mission? They have something to do. Like, are they walking somewhere with purpose, or are they just lollygagging around on the street? These are actually the biggest factors in that go, no-go decision. And this is very interesting. So in exploring this over the years, I've tried to think about ways to better explain this, because it's kind of hard to explain. Oh, okay, somebody walks weird. So what does that mean, right?
Yeah, that's my question.
So what it is, it's about the self-confidence in walk. It's about the self-confidence in your stride. So the best example that I can give, we can all relate to this because we've probably all seen it. Everybody who had a high school experience, even a college experience in your early years, think of that girl that you knew in school. She didn't have many friends. She was extremely quiet, very introverted. She walked down the hallway, always clutching her books like this, and wouldn't make eye contact, and just kind of walked with her head down, trying to disappear in the environment. Is an absolute go decision among violent psychopaths. That has victimization written all over it, because really what they're looking for is somebody who's not going to fight back.
Yeah.
Because you would ask yourself, why would that girl who walks like that, be more appealing than, say, a woman the same size, dressed in a business dress and carrying a briefcase and walking like with authority into a place to do business? The difference is the self-confidence level.
Yeah.
Because even though physically there's really no difference in what kind of threat they pose to, neither of them is Conor McGregor we're looking at, right? So there's no difference in strength and capability that we're looking at.
We've all seen that Conor McGregor walk with his arms and shoulders out. And,
Well, he's a perfect example. All those guys, you take one look at them, and that's definitely a no-go decision, right? So, but take a female, the girl who's clutching her books and trying not to make eye contact, compared to the girl who's walking with confidence. The difference is one's going to fight back and one's not.
I often use this term called command presence, and that's something that goes back to my law enforcement training years and years ago, and how you're carrying yourself, how you speak, your body language. It makes perfectly good sense to me. You don't want to look like a passive person.
Yeah, you don't want to look like food, right? You don't want to look like food on the Serengeti. You want to look like another lion, right? And the walk gives away so much. This is why this is very interesting. There are some individuals who are victimized multiple times, like women who are raped multiple times, other people who are just mugged multiple times. It comes down to the body language, and this is where it gets really creepy. It is because of that body language that they tend to be the go decision. And the more often they get victimized, the more sheepish they typically become.
Yeah.
And studies show that psychopaths, violent felons who are officially labeled as psychopathic, and in fact, violent felons who rank high in what's called the dark tetrad. That's the 4 elements of psychology that are sinister. So you have psychopath, psychopathy, sociopaths, narcissists, Machiavellianism, basically. Those
Okay.
four. Okay, that's called the dark tetrad in psychology. When you have individuals who rank very high in all four of those, they become almost like superhuman ability to recognize previous victimization.
Wow.
And
That
studies
is,
show that, and it's very scary, but that's the case. So here we're talking about people who are not your typical street thugs who grow up like in gang life, and the reason they're going to rob you is because they want your money, right?
yeah.
We're talking about something different. We're talking now. Let me mention they also make a go or no go decision based on this body language. However,
Okay.
when we're talking about the psychopathic, whether it be serial killers or serial rapists, etc., they are looking specifically to victimize people that they want to do physical harm to because that's what they like to do. Okay. And that's a
Yeah.
different category. And when they rank very high on that dark tetrad, they can always sniff out just, it's again, it's a superhuman ability that they can tell who's been victimized previously.
Wow. You're blowing my mind with this. It's just really scary to think about. There's people out there like,
Yes.
let's speak to our viewers who have may have been prior victims, like right now. Let's speak to those victims and give them some advice, Sal, so that they don't look like a soft target again. If you're watching, if you're a viewer, if you've been mugged in the past, it's a very traumatic experience. If
Mhm.
you've been jumped, whatever. This is victimized in any way. It's very traumatic. You may even be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a thing. It really is. So what would you say to those people, Sal?
And this is a tough one because a lot of how we carry ourselves is just your innate nature. Some people are more confident than others. Some people are extroverted, some are introverted, etc. All of us can do certain things that obviously changes the way we move. And before we even get into that, let me mention that if you have certain physical disabilities, it puts you into a heightened level of that go or no go decision. Right. And
Right.
even if it's a temporary disability, for exactly, you can be like a buff, hard dude MMA fighter, and all of a sudden you're on crutches for 2 months
Yeah.
because you had knee surgery. Guess what? You're in a different victimization profile, and you should be aware of that. Now, even with the disability, the attitude and the confidence come through, which may mean more than anything else. However, you have to bear that in mind. So there are physical disabilities that are out of our control for all of us, whether they're permanent or temporary disability we may go through. Just be aware that does put you in a heightened threat profile. We also come back to that puts you now in a legal position of disparity of force, right? Because if your leg is in a cast or whatever, you're not legally required to go hands-on with a big, strong aggressor like you would be if you were sound of body, right? So we always have to bear those things in mind. But in general, if we want to talk about what people can do to try to break out of that body language portrayal of a perfect victim, first consider the confidence. And again, think of examples we all know and understand. That girl walking with her books clutched like this, avoiding eye contact. That's a perfect example because we all know people like that, right? Or at least previously in our life, in high school, etc., you knew people like that. What I would suggest for people who are just wired that way is the place to start is just try to build more self-confidence in human interaction. Here's something that terrifies people, but I recommend it. If you can't speak to people well, join Toastmasters.
Right.
And public speaking terrifies people. In fact, that's one of like the greatest fears. Like studies show that speaking in public, a lot of people find that scarier than death and whatever else.
A real thing. Yeah.
So that's a real thing. So if you have a problem with your self-confidence interacting with people, force yourself to get out of that bubble. Force yourself to overcome that fear. Join Toastmasters. That will teach you how to actually speak and be charismatic, etc. And it's funny, people like us, I know you probably speak in front of people all the time, right? That's what I do. Not only as an instructor, like my day job, I I teach adults how to do stuff all the time. So when you do that kind of thing for a living, like you don't even think about it. Oh, get up in front of 500 people and talk for an hour
Yeah.
about this. Go, no problem, right? But people who don't do that all the time, it's a big deal. So that would be my first suggestion. If you are extremely introverted and just kind of nervous around other people, force your way out of that box. Not
Yeah.
only does that help with your body language as far as making you less appealing to criminals, it will help with all kinds of things, your professional life, etc. So
Yeah.
that's where I would start. Beyond that, and this one I don't want to hit on too hard, but it is a thing. People who are physically fit, needless to say, are less attractive as a victim. Studies show that particularly in men, particularly the shoulders, are what
Huh.
make all the difference, because large shoulders, and this is regardless of is it a huge guy or a small guy. Like, you know how some guys are really small framed and maybe they're 140 pounds soaking wet, but they have unusually wide shoulders.
Yeah.
That displays strength. Shoulders means a guy can hit. Now, we can't change
And
how.
it's a very masculine trait as well.
Yes.
Typically, men have bigger, wider shoulders than women do. Yeah.
And men who work out have the big deltoids and shoulders, and it makes a huge difference. Now, with that
Yeah.
said, am I saying, okay, well, hit the gym and do bodybuilding for the next 3 years and you'll be good to go? That's kind of a tall order, right? But
Yeah.
it is a thing of being physically fit, and it's not even necessarily being thin, because we all know we make fun of like the dad bod, like so
Yeah.
many middle-aged guys. Well, the thing going on with what real dad bod is, it's not just an out of shape guy. It's a guy you take one look at and say, yeah, that dude used to be a bodybuilder and now he kind of eats wrong. So he's a bodybuilder who's huge chest and huge shoulders, but he's like 40 pounds overweight, right?
Yeah.
But even that guy, you can see the strength. There's a portrayal of strength that puts criminals off. So it's just another thing to consider. Here's what I would offer, though. If you hit the gym in this regard, not only does it change your physical appearance, it's obviously very good for your longevity and health, but also it changes your confidence.
Absolutely. It
That
definitely
is
gives
the
you a
bigger
mental
element.
boost.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. I went through a midlife thing. I'm not going to call it a crisis. I used to do a lot of stunt work and very physical work. And then I retired from that end of things, gained some weight, just kind of felt bad about myself. And then I started working out again, really boosted my confidence again, and made me feel a whole lot better. And hopefully it makes me not look like a soft target as well, because I'm always thinking about that command presence and appearance and situational awareness and eye contact and things like that. The folks who are typically, and we've probably touched on this in the past, but I think it's worth discussing dress and how you dress for folks who may appear to be a soft target. You got any suggestions on, for the ladies in particular that are going grocery shopping? Does anything come to mind as far as dress is concerned to make them not look like a soft target, Sal?
So to be honest, dress factors very little into this criteria of victim selection based on the studies. The way they're dressed factors very little. Here's one thing I will say, though, because I have actually dealt with this in the past. I've written about this. The way you dressed very clearly portrays whether you are carrying defensive tools or not. So that's one thing I would throw out for consideration. Now, 5 years ago, that was especially true, and I would really harp on that. Less so now, because now we have, I'll admit, post-COVID, I walk around like the neighborhood and even run to the grocery store in sweatpants. I never did that before, but I got used to that more casual lifestyle and just kind of hang on. After that, here's the thing, though. Now with inventions, the Filster Enigma, you can look that up, what that is. Other kind of belly band solutions. You can walk around in sweatpants and be fully armed, like with a full-size pistol and a reload on your
Absolutely.
body, right?
Yes. And for our female viewers, there are a ton of concealed carry items. We joke about the flashbang holster, for instance. That's the holster. It's an upper thorax. It's a bra holster. Okay, I'll just say it up here, and it's flash, haha, right? But bang, not so haha. Just an example of a lot of things that are out there. So for casually dressed people, I have a good friend, Amy Robbins. I'll give her a plug right now. Alexo Athletica, which is concealed carry clothing for women. So ladies, check it out. Alexo Athletica, running pants, things that normally you wouldn't associate with concealed carry. There's a lot of stuff out there. That's a really good point, Sal. We live in a little different society now.
Yeah.
There's a lot, even in their pajamas in the grocery store.
Yeah,
I've seen
exactly.
that.
Again, though, to your point, though, Denny, you say about the way you dress. If you're dressed in your pajamas in the grocery store, which we see all the time, that's a pretty clear indicator you're the kind of individual who's probably not carrying tools at that point. So I would say there is some merit in considering dress. That's a good example of this is the kind of individual who's very casual in their life. They literally won't put on real clothes to go to the grocery store. Well, they're probably not particularly switched on when it comes to protecting themselves.
Yeah, you bet. So we're kind of getting into the appearance sort of things now.
If you would, Denny, let me hit on the single biggest factor as far as what's in your control that we can do, your appearance when it comes to this stuff. Because if you get training and if you carry weaponry, all of a sudden you go from being scared as soon as you're confronted with any kind of threat to having a self-confidence that's like, okay, I see that guy there. He does anything, I know what to do. As in, there's going to be a victim today and it's not going to be me. Right. So that alone, I don't care how introverted you are, if you are well trained and you're carrying tools, and even if you're in areas where you can't be carrying a gun, okay, OC spray, a blade, all these things that are involved, you have capability. And now you go from, oh God, I hope he's not paying attention to me. I hope he didn't see me. I hope he's not looking at me, to, oh, I hope he doesn't try anything because I'm going to spend the day talking with the police and he's leaving in a bag. And I don't mean to say be callous with that, but if that is your mindset, you're far less likely to be victimized because they pick up on that. They are like, they have radar for this kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
As a good firearms instructor and a friend of mine, John Murphy of FPF Training he says criminals in street life, their medical benefits are not so good. Like their benefits package is not great. So they're not looking for a fight. They're looking for a victim. They don't want to fight because their benefits package in thug life is just not good. But I love the way he says that. So consider that, right? So that's why if you portray just having that training, now all of a sudden you go from being sheepish and looking scared to, again, not confrontational, not trying to incite something, but you look and you acknowledge and you're confident because if they try something, it's going to go very differently compared to what they think is going to happen.
Fantastic information. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss just at least briefly circumstances of being in your vehicle, pulling up to a stop, waiting for that light, making yourself a little bit of a harder target in your vehicle. Sal, can we speak to that just a little bit?
So in the vehicle, while you're sitting in the vehicle, obviously the portrayal of body language will be less than when you're walking. However, I would come back to the big one there is going to be staying alert. Right?
Yeah.
Are you always on your phone? If you're on your phone when you're in the vehicle, that's bad. You shouldn't do that anyway. But we've all seen the people who, as soon as they come to a stoplight, they're looking at their phone. As soon as they come to a stop sign, they're looking at their phone. They're parked in front of the Walmart looking at their phone. Don't be that person, because now you are perfect for victimization to a carjacker. That kind of person wants to take you by surprise. If your head is up on a swivel while you're sitting still in your car, that changes everything as far as that go or no go decision.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw in there, windows up, doors locked.
Yes, no question.
100%. Man, we've covered a lot in a short time. We do have to answer our question from conflictedthegame.com. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to read it back to you. The survival group, this is post-apocalyptic now, right? The survival group you belong to has a lot of children. What are 3 essential life skills that every child should know in today's current society? And then what would you add, 3 other skills that you would add to their education in the post-apocalyptic world? Sal, you get to go first.
This is actually a great question. Yeah, great question. Now, while I've sat here talking, I haven't exactly had time to think about it, but I'll just off the cuff give you what I would suggest. So in today's world, 3 things that I think is very important to instill in your children. The first, the whole don't talk to strangers thing, right? And we can start them very young with that. Do not trust people you don't know. Don't go off with people you don't know. Don't get in vehicles. If somebody says, hey, you want to see my puppy, this kind of stuff, right? right? So that whole strategy. The second one is be alert to the exits in your environment. That is something you can teach children at a very young age. You can turn it into a game, okay? Where are the exits? Anywhere we are, if something bad happens, how do you get out of here? The third thing I would say, and this will carry into the second set of questions, is you need to teach your children to go with their instincts. If something does not feel right, they need to not discount that, because in our modern society, we're worried about not being rude and all that. You need to teach your kids, if you get a bad vibe about somebody, then get away from them. If you're somewhere and you get a bad vibe, don't say, oh, it was fireworks. Why are there fireworks going off in the mall, right? We always come back to the kind of stuff. Act on your instincts, find the exit, and leave. So those are the three I would give for current day, right? And we could go further with teach them medical skills early, all that kind of stuff. But that's the three I'd give for now.
Yeah.
The post-apocalyptic are a little bit more difficult, but here's how I would start is with the third point I just suggested for the normal times. Go with your instinct. I think any kind of post-apocalyptic scenario, that's going to be extremely important, right? If you have an older kid, he's out working in the field. What is that in the tree line? I got a bad feeling. You need to always act on your instincts, right? I get a bad feeling. Who are those guys coming up the driveway? Do I know them? I get a bad vibe from them. You must go with your brain is almost always right. Okay, your lizard brain that overrides your thinking brain that says there's a problem here. It's almost always right. You have to act on it. So that'd be the first suggestion for post-apocalyptic. Second suggestion. Here's one not a lot of people talk about. Even if you have younger children who you can't have strapped with guns walking around in post-apocalyptic, even younger children, teach them about fire safety, where the fire extinguishers are, because man, in post-apocalyptic, when there is no longer a functioning fire department, etc., you have to deal with that on your own. Have fire extinguishers in the house and have that ready to go. And finally, the third thing, here's another interesting one that just came to mind, so I'll throw it out there. Post-apocalyptic, and maybe even a better way to say this is post-grid down. So it could be temporary, it could be long-term, it could be permanent, right? Medical facilities may not be up and running at all. So think of this. When your kids get dirty, something that would have been a cut, that would have been no big deal, because if worse came to worse, you go get antibiotics. You need to instill cleanliness in children, like keeping hands clean. Hygiene, because something that would be no big deal now, just a cut that lets bacteria in, can be a big deal in a grid down scenario. So instilling hygiene, especially post-apocalyptic, that might be the single biggest lifesaver you can teach your kids at that point. So there's mine.
All right, cool. So I'm going to say, for today's modern society, I want my children to be good communicators, know first aid, know how to survive, basic home survival skills. So communication for obvious reasons, in and outside the home, to grow into being a successful adult. First aid skills, because you're going to get hurt at some point. Someone else is going to get hurt, whether it's in today's modern society or in a post-apocalyptic, and just survival in the home, because we spend a lot of time at home. How to put out a fire, how to cook your own meal, how to do things to survive at home. So those things just come to mind. So post-apocalyptic: fire, water, food, shelter, self-defense. The common survival things come back to mind. Yes, I would want our children, it said the three things, other things, but I would want to teach them more than three things, right? How to build a fire, how to find food, how to find water and make it safe to drink, how to build a shelter, and how to defend yourself and or hunt for food. Kind of goes together. So that's my answer for that, Sal. You were a little more comprehensive than
but
I
there's
was.
so many we could talk about. One you hit on, medical, and that again for now, or post grid down. Once your kids are honestly 8-10 years old, you can teach them how to apply a tourniquet, how to pack a wound.
Absolutely.
That is important stuff. And in fact, once they're a little bit older, put a trauma kit at the bottom of their backpack for school or wherever else they go. So
Yeah.
I would definitely second your opinion on that. And that is a life skill for right now. It's a life skill for in the future if we face any kind of grid down long-term scenarios.
You betcha. Great discussion today. Sum it up for us, Sal. How to become a hard target.
If nothing else, training. Get training, because that is going to change your own opinion of yourself, and it exudes into the atmosphere. You will just inherently carry yourself with more confidence when you are capable and skilled. So don't worry about how little you are, how big you are, all of that kind of stuff. You get training and it's going to dramatically change the way you carry yourself.
100%. Hey guys, we're going to have a couple of links in today's description so you can refer back to some of the information that Sal has shared to us. ConcealedCarryNation.org. We'll have a link to some information there, and USACarry.com. Sal is a regular contributor there to USACarry.com. And don't forget, check out Sal's book, 21st Century Minuteman. It's available on Amazon. We'll try to provide a link there as well. Let us know in the comments if you got anything from today's discussion, and let us know if you have ever had any of those circumstances. Have you ever been a victim? Were you, and why? Did you feel like you were a soft target? How could you improve? Let us know how you feel about that, how you feel about today's discussion. As always, we want you to hit those buttons, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thanks a bunch for watching. Thank you, Sal, and be careful out there, everybody.